Every day I work to create hope.
Jobs.
A cure.
A community.
I've come to fully understand how fortunate I am for my family, friends, and industry that have helped me fight the biggest battle of my life. I work every day to help create that strength in others.
I work every day to ensure our manufacturing sector and companies like this bring innovation and jobs to an industry that saves lives in Texas and across the nation.
And the lives I work to save keep families together, increase their quality of life, and in the end, build a community in my town.
And my community is one that I am proud to be a part of. I work to support my employees, the neighborhoods we live in, and the economy. All thanks to an industry that supports small businesses like mine.
We all stand together to educate our lawmakers, our communities, and the nation
on the positive impact the biopharmaceutical industry delivers for all of us.
And as we stand together, we work for health, for our families, our patients, and for you.
Let's get to work.
Welcome to our keynote session, where I'm excited to introduce two impactful leaders. We will start our conversation with Congressman Drew Ferguson, and then we'll hear from Dr. Suresh Ramalingan, the Executive Director of Winship Cancer Institute at Emory University. My name is Lynn Durham, and I am the President and CEO of Georgia Core, the Georgia Center for Oncology Research and Education, where we are working with Georgians to improve cancer care through partnerships and innovation. I am honored to introduce Congressman Drew Ferguson, who represents Georgia's 3rd Congressional District in West Central Georgia. Representative Ferguson is a University of Georgia graduate who went on to the Medical College of Georgia, where he earned his dental medicine degree. He returned to his hometown of West Point, where he started a dental practice. He was then elected mayor of West Point and then elected to Congress and joined Congress in 2017. He is the Chief Deputy Whip for the House Republicans and serves as a member of the powerful Ways and Means Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us.
Lynn, thank you for having me today, and I look forward to the discussion.
Absolutely. Well, we all know that early detection in cancer care is vitally important. What role can Congress play in early detection?
Lynn, early diagnostics is important for just about every healthcare issue that we face. Listen, as a practicing dentist, I understood how important early detection was, whether it was with a specific dental issue or whether it was early diagnosis of oral cancers. The sooner you pick it up, the better chance a patient has at surviving and the better their quality of life afterwards. And so where I think Congress should be active in this role is to be working in a way that incentivizes innovation and growth within bio and within pharma. The things that we do right now make it very cumbersome for innovators and researchers to actually get the latest innovations to market. So we want to think about things about how we incentivize capital the right way to flow into research and development to get those products to market sooner. As it relates to cancer, obviously we've made tremendous headway on survivability and quality of life afterwards. But this early detection phase, we should be pouring so much into that. And that's not always the area that is quote unquote the most profitable, but it has the most impact on quality of life because early detection is so important. So sometimes it's about putting money into the research side of this. I think we've got to be innovative with the tax code to make the capital, the private capital that will flow into these markets to develop these early diagnostic tests and other innovative products. That's where we need to be focusing. Unfortunately, where we are right now is that we're seeing Congress potentially take the exact opposite step with bills like H.R. 3 that are going to remove the incentive for American innovators and companies to develop these important products here in the U.S. So we're in a real battle, and I think that whatever we do and however we get there, we need to be innovative, where we incentivize research and development, get the product to market quicker, and save more lives and increase the quality of our patients' lives.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Let me ask you specifically about one piece of legislation. It's the Medicare Multi-Cancer Early Detection Screening Coverage Act of 2021, very long, and you are a co-sponsor of that legislation. Can you tell us about the legislation and why you chose to be a co-sponsor?
Yes, I am. Again, it goes back to a belief that early detection and early screening is important. We know that it saves lives. We know that we know that screening for breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, they all save lives because you catch the disease at an earlier stage, and treatments work better. It never works as well. Treatments don't work as well if you catch it at a later stage. So anything that we can do to again make sure that patients have access to these early tests, and that providers have a way to get paid for these tests, we think is ultimately important for the quality of life and for the ultimate cost of the healthcare system, because early detection, early treatment is much less expensive than later detection and more costly late stage treatment.
Absolutely. And this new, you said you're tying together the first two questions beautifully, because you're talking about innovation in cancer and detection, and then why it's so important to have this. Talk a little bit about the Medicare piece of that and why it's important to give them the permission, the allowance to cover this particular bill, or I'm sorry, this particular test.
Bottom line, again, to me, it's just crystal clear that the more that you put into early detection and prevention, the better off you're going to be, both not only from a patient standpoint, but from a fiscal standpoint as well. I'll say it again, early detection and early treatment is better for the patient, and it's better for America's pocketbook as well.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. We are grateful for your sponsorship of this legislation and for your service in Congress and all you do. Is there anything else that you would like to tell the folks today in the conference?
Yeah. First of all, keep working, keep innovating, keep saving lives, keep improving the quality of our life. We understand many of the challenges that you're facing right now. And in many cases, it's about making sure that Washington gets out of the way of the innovators and make sure that there are viable pathways for the products that are going to make our lives better and improve patient outcomes. I'll give you one such example, the Pasteur Act, of which I was a co-author. It's a bipartisan, bicameral bill looking at antibiotics for resistant bacteria. There's some real challenges in how we develop those antibiotics and get them to market. It's not always, again, the big income streams that many investors want to see, but there's still a need for it. So we've been able to propose something that would allow us to develop these antibiotics and get them to market and to make sure that they're available when we need them. Again, we need to apply many of the same philosophies and techniques to looking at things like early detection for cancer, but much better early treatments for cancer, in a variety of chronic illnesses that Americans face. We need to be making investments in the early stages of these, not just the chronic phase of it.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for your support. We are very grateful for it. Now I'm going to move on to introducing our next speaker. Now I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Suresh Ramalingan, whom I'm very proud to say is a member of the Georgia Corps Board of Directors. Dr. Ram, as he is affectionately known, was named the Executive Director of the Winship Cancer Institute this summer. He is a professor of hematology and oncology at the Emory University School of Medicine, where he is nationally recognized for his research and his clinical work with small cell and non-small cell lung cancer. He is the editor-in-chief of Cancer, an esteemed oncology academic journal, and the former president of the Georgia Society of Clinical Oncology. Dr. Ram. Okay.
Thank you, Lynn. Good afternoon, everybody. Let me share my screens. I first of all want to thank Georgia Bio for the kind invitation to speak, and to Lynn for her kind introduction. What I would like to do is to give you a very brief overview of some of the exciting scientific advances that are revolutionizing patient care. And the message that I'm going to give you can be seen across the spectrum of various ailments that we all suffer from, or our population suffers from time to time. I'm going to take the view of an oncologist taking care of patients with lung cancer and give you the story through the eyes of a lung cancer patient or somebody who has been following the lung cancer world over the past decades, to bring home the point that we're making progress. No question, more work needs to be done, but it's a time for us to look back and see how far we've come. Now, when we look at what are the driving forces that have resulted in the major progress that are being seen in the medical field, these are some of the few. We are, through research, understanding the biology of various diseases better. How do certain diseases affect patients? How do organisms, microorganisms, infect patients? How can we stop them from getting worse? We're also in a time where there are much better technological innovations. One specific area where technology is helping us is diagnosis. Understanding what symptoms lead to a problem is the first step, or what symptoms are a manifestation of a problem are the first step. But once you know that, to confirm the diagnosis, you need technology. We have sophisticated scans, MRIs, blood-based tests, a lot of ways by which we can arrive at a diagnosis a lot sooner and a lot more efficiently without being invasive whenever possible. We also have better treatment approaches for a variety of diseases, and I'm going to talk to you about that in a second. And finally, we also have better supportive care, both in terms of medical needs and societal support to help patients get through their journey. Now, I would say that this is an area where there are disparities. We don't think everybody has access to care, and if we can apply existing scientific and medical innovations to every patient, we would be able to improve the outcomes for many diseases. So we also need to address these disparities that are seen in our communities. Let me talk about lung cancer to give you an example, to serve as an example of how much progress is being made. This is a graph that shows deaths related to cancer in men over the past 90 years, from the year 1930 all the way until 2017. And the big red prominent curve is lung cancer deaths. You can see how we were seeing a very scary uptick of lung cancer deaths for a good 30-40 year period, starting from the 1930s all the way up to the 1980s and 1990. But the good news is, in the past 20 years, we've made major progress. You can see the curves coming down quite dramatically, just as fast as it went up. And this is a reality that's making a difference in the lives of patients with lung cancer and patients at risk for lung cancer. So this is a pictorial, they say a picture tells 1,000 words. This graph tells you how much progress we're making just in one disease, which is lung cancer, which turns out to be the most common cause of deaths for cancer across the country and across the world as well. Now, I told you we're making this progress, but this is the year 2000. This is a study that I was very familiar with when I was training to be a thoracic oncologist. And here is a study which was done for patients with very advanced stage of lung cancer. And with chemotherapy, the survival for these patients was months. 8 months was the median survival. So this was not too long ago when a patient was diagnosed with stage 4 disease, the survival was measured in just months. Now, the good news is this is no longer the reality. There are exciting treatment advances that have resulted in improvements in patients with lung cancer. It's fair to say that for a good number of patients with stage 4 disease, the survival is now measured in years, not months. How did that come about? I think the biggest difference was precision medicine. Understanding that every patient has different biology. When you see patients when I see patients in the clinic, no two patients have the same pattern of disease, even though they all have lung cancer. And even for a given patient, it's not the same disease from month to month or year to year. What was different in 2020 behaves differently in 2021. And as a result of this, the same treatment option is not going to work for every patient. What works for patient A will not necessarily work for patient B, and vice versa. So the most important thing is we have to understand what's unique about that patient's disease, and then you tailor the therapy to specifically treat that particular patient. And that is precision medicine at the heart of it. In the year 2000 and a little after that, we started learning how to apply precision medicine in lung cancers. We're continuing to learn how to do it better and better. And in order to do that, we rely on biomarkers. And this is a term you're going to hear a lot, biomarkers. What is a biomarker? Well, it's some biological information that you learn from a patient's disease or about the patient himself or herself that helps you make a better diagnostic approach, or that helps you be able to say which patient is not going to do well, which patient is going to do well, which we call prognosis. And finally, what treatment option is likely to work for a given patient. So a biomarker can be something that we learn from a blood test. It could be something we learn from testing the tumor tissue that was obtained from a patient. Regardless, you use that biological piece of information to make specific conclusions about the patient sitting in front of you. And that, I think, is key to our successful treatment approaches. This is a pie chart. This pie chart has evolved because our understanding of biology of lung cancer has evolved over time. 20 years ago, all of lung cancer was one big pie. There was no slices to the pie. We thought about all patients with lung cancer as being one entity. We use the same sort of treatment approaches for patients across the board. As we started understanding about biomarkers, about genes that are driving various patients' cancers, we started breaking the pie down into smaller and smaller slices. So each colored slice you see on this pie chart represents a specific subtype of lung cancer. And we now try to see a patient sitting in front of us as being representative of one piece of this pie. And how do we know which slice of the pie a particular patient belongs in? We do genomic or genetic testing. We look at the tumor tissue and conduct molecular analysis to see what mutations are seen in a patient's tumor. And based on that, we can say this patient has mutation X, mutation Y, or mutation Z. And that information helps us develop specific therapies. And on this pie chart, you see little boxes of names of medications that are approved for specific mutations. And you can see that each box has different set of medications for all practical purposes. So if a patient were to fall on the red slice of the pie, you have to give a medicine that works just for the red slice. If you give a medicine that is approved for the blue slice, that will not work for a patient on the red slice. And this is where we need to know which particular type of mutation a patient has, and then you can tailor therapies. And we know that when we do that, patients are living a lot longer. That's the curve on the right side. The yellow bars represent patients who have these targets and they received a specific targeted therapy, and they do much better compared to people without targets or people whose targets do not have effective treatment approaches. Now, to give you a flavor for the advances that have been made in lung cancer, this is a slide that shows all the various medications that have been approved for the treatment of lung cancer. Now, to put this in perspective, in the year 2000, there were no more than 3 or 4 drugs that were approved for the treatment of lung cancer. Here you see just in the past 4.5, 5 years, close to a dozen plus drugs approved for lung cancer. And these are all approved based on biomarkers, vast majority of them. Everything you see on the lower half of the slide are medications that have been approved for the treatment of lung cancer based on specific biomarkers. On the top are drugs, actually, these are immunotherapies. Many of them are approved based on biomarkers. Some of them, even though they are approved without a biomarker, we use biomarker to decide what sort of approaches are going to help patients. And as a result of this, from year to year in the past 5 to 6 years, we are seeing about 3 to 4% reduction in deaths related to lung cancer in the United States, just year to year. And if somebody were to tell me 10 years ago in my career that we're going to make that kind of progress in lung cancer While the optimistic part of me would have been excited, the realistic part of me would have said, "Why, that would be a dream come true." So, but now the dream is coming true. Patients are living longer, patients are getting better. And here are a variety of tests that we do for patients diagnosed with lung cancer now in the year 2021. We look at the tumor tissue, we specifically do sequencing, and we see which mutations, which biomarkers are present in a patient. And this information is then used to make treatment decisions for patients. So we almost say that you never leave shore if you're a sailor. If you think about the parallel with sailing and lung cancer, before somebody starts on their treatment journey, they should have this biomarker testing. You'd never set sail without biomarker testing, because it's hard to retract the way back if you start forward a treatment journey without having had biomarkers. And then coming back has its own consequences, and you may lose the window of opportunity to provide an effective treatment to a patient if you don't have this biomarker testing. Now, another exciting advance that's happening in our field is we can do a lot of this testing through a tube of blood. This is what we call cell-free DNA technology. We know that tumors, as they divide and proliferate, they keep shedding cells and nuclear material, and some of this makes into our circulation, and they're circulating in the blood for a short amount of time. They don't stay forever. When the tumor cell dies, some DNA is shed. You can see it for a few days and then it'll be gone. But since these tumors are constantly churning, you can find some of this material at any given time. Now, normal cells also shed their DNA into the blood. So when we test a tube of blood for tumor-derived DNA, it's really looking for needles in a haystack. But the exciting technological advances allow for us to find that needle in the haystack. Not only do we find the needle, we can sequence that to see what specific biomarker a patient has and use that information to make treatment decisions. Now we're taking this to a new frontier. We know that patients get surgery for lung cancer and various cancers. The good news is surgery cures majority of the patients, but there are some patients who are not cured. And right now we don't know how to know after surgery whether a patient can be cured, has been cured with surgery or not. Because if they're not cured with surgery, you're going to have to do more to try and cure them. Now with the ctDNA approach, it is likely that we can detect whose system still has these tumor cells and use that information to decide who's going to be cured with surgery and who is not. These are clinical trials we're doing right now as we speak. This is not ready for using in clinic in 2021, but I foresee in the very near future, I'm talking 2-3 years, we're going to be using this kind of information to make decisions about who is cured, who is not cured, and make appropriate choices for the next step for that particular patient. Wouldn't it be great if a patient has surgery for stage 2 lung cancer, and 6 weeks from now, the surgeon can and the medical oncologist can look at their blood tests and say, your tumor has been removed, we've checked your blood, we don't see any tumor related markers, so we think you're cured and the cancer is not going to recur. Imagine how much of a relief that'll be for that patient, as opposed to waiting for 5 years with scans every few months to know the cancer is cured. So this is the power of the technology that we're looking at, and we're hoping that through research, we can bring it to close very soon. Now, let me finish up talking about what this all means for patients. Well, here is a patient of mine I see in clinic. She's 71 years old now. I saw her almost 12 years ago in my clinic. She had been diagnosed with stage 4 non-small cell lung cancer, which is the most common form of lung cancer. At that time, we just had chemotherapy as the option. We gave her chemotherapy. She was actually as part of a clinical trial where we gave chemo with a new drug. It worked well, but after 8 months, the cancer stopped responding to the chemotherapy. And at that time, we had started doing sequencing of the tumor. So we sequenced her tumor. Fortunately, we found this EGFR mutation. And then we started her on targeted therapy, which is a pill that she takes every day at home. She comes and sees us every 3 months, get a scan. Things look good. We say, go back and come back in 3 months. And very little side effects because these drugs are highly targeted to the cancer cell. Now, she did well for 8 years. In 2018, unfortunately, developed a new focus of cancer in the brain. So we had to go in, operate, remove the tumor. And then we did the mutation sequencing of her tumor again. And we found a new mutation that was causing the resistance. Fortunately, a new medicine we had developed was available for her. This medicine was not available in 2010, but it was available in 2018. So we started on this new pill, and she's been on it for now three years. She sees me every 3 months again. Her scans show no evidence of cancer. We know that, unfortunately, at some point, her cancer may come back, and we're working on research to have options for her when that happens. So in conclusion, what I would like to finish up talking about is that the investments that have been made in biomedical research are paying dividends. Patients are living longer, patients are living better. And now it's possible to tell a patient with advanced stage of disease that long-term survival is possible. You will be there most likely for your son's graduation or for your grandkids' graduation or wedding or a milestone in your life. And biomarkers are really the key to helping us personalize these treatment approaches and also to be identify those patients where we feel not confident that they're going to be around years later. And for all of these, I want to say that clinical trials are critically important. We can do all the exciting work in the lab, but if we're not able to study them in patients, we will never be able to get these drugs to the clinic. And this is where participation in clinical trials, raising awareness about clinical trials, working with organizations like Georgia Core that Lynn heads to spread the message of clinical trials, make trials available for patients across our state are all important. So we're excited about the progress that's made, but we realize much more work remains to be done. And I look forward to working with the biomedical research community across the state to make that a reality. Thank you so much. I'll be happy to take questions.
Dr. Ramalingan, thank you so much for speaking to us about that. Let me ask you one quick question. Now you spoke, of course, you're a lung cancer specialist. What about precision medicine for other cancers? Is it as far advanced as it is for lung cancer?
Precision medicine is definitely being used for vast majority of the cancers. The extent to which we have drugs for certain sets or subsets of patients varies from one disease to the other. But the exciting news is that every month the FDA is approving a new medicine for a certain cancer based on a biomarker. So just in the past 10 days, there was a new drug approved for lung cancer. There's a drug that's coming up for breast cancer. So I think precision medicine is part of management of practically every cancer. And for cancers where the approaches are limited right now, I see that in 2 to 3 years, we're going to have far more options. So it's just a question of where we are in each disease may be different, but the path we're taking has many parallels from one cancer to the other. And that's why I think the story we talked about with lung cancer is broadly applicable to other cancers as well.
Excellent. Well, we just have time for one more question. I want to ask you, we're after this panel, we're going to move to the next panel, which is about legislative advocacy for patient community. So tell me, is there any type of legislative work that you can think of, what Congressman Ferguson spoke a little bit, that would help the cancer community in general advance the sciences in finding cures for cancer?
Absolutely. I think legislation has been helpful in the past, and I believe it can be helpful. One area is I talked about clinical trials. I think making sure that Medicaid allows for patients to participate in clinical trials for the standard components, I think will be important. I know there is work on that front happening in the Congress. Again, research, I think what we're seeing is payoff from research investments that have been made. This year, we're celebrating the 50th year of the National Cancer Act, which was signed in 1971. And that single piece of legislation signed by President Nixon had a dramatic impact on how our country as a whole approached cancer research and cancer care. I believe that investments in research will, if we rededicate ourselves to making those sort of investments once again in 2021, we will start seeing progress come a lot sooner. So I would say we need to encourage research community. We need to bring in the brightest minds by providing them research grants. We're seeing attrition because the most promising researchers are not taking up careers in biomedical research. We want to bring them back into the fold. We want to encourage them by research grants. We want to raise awareness, support clinical trials, bring technology. I think all of these can be made possible by legislation.
Excellent. Again, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. And now we are going to move on to the final panel, which is the legislative advocacy and updates for the patient community.